Why was everyone pretending not to notice her silence? The briefing room buzzed with clipped voices, tactical maps, markers scraping across laminated surfaces. Men leaned over tables, pointing at routes and sectors, their boots muddy from the last patrol. Radios crackled. And yet she sat at the edge, eyes steady, hands folded so tightly the knuckles blanched. Nobody asked her opinion. Nobody dared. Not because she wasn't qualified. Not because she hadn't proven herself 100 times over, but because she carried something invisible, something heavier than her rifle. And the truth was, no one quite knew what to say around her anymore. The colonel's voice boomed through the room. Coordinates, rooftops, extraction points. They nodded, scribbled notes. She didn't move. Not yet. She was listening to something else entirely, the hollow echo of her own pulse in her ears. There was a sound missing from the room, the sound she couldn't stop searching for, a laugh, a voice, a rhythm that used to steady her before every mission, but it was gone now, and she hadn't told them why, not yet. Her name on the mission roster looked stark against the others. Specialist Mara Hale, designated marksman, Overwatch, 3 words that defined her world. Watch, wait, protect. But tonight, watching might not be enough. The city outside was already burning in places. Windows smashed, dust swirling in wind like ash from a long-dead fire. Somewhere beyond the broken skyline, families huddled in basements, clinging to whatever faith remained that the night would pass without their walls collapsing. And Mara was supposed to be their ghost, the unseen shadow keeping death at bay. The colonel's final words snapped her back. Hale, you'll take the East Tower, 2 clicks from insertion point, high enough for full coverage, but you'll be alone until link-up. Questions. She shook her head, not because she had none, but because none of them could answer the one question burning in her chest. How do you keep saving strangers when you couldn't save the one person who mattered most? The hum of the Black Hawk's blades churned through the night. Darkness pressed close, broken only by the glow of the cockpit instruments. Inside, the team checked gear, loaded mags, whispered jokes to mask the edge in their voices. She said nothing. A young private across from her, couldn't be more than 19, kept fidgeting with his helmet strap. His leg bounced against the steel floor. He caught her gaze and offered a weak grin. First time outside the wire at night. She managed a half-smile. It was the kind of confession soldiers made, half proud, half terrified. She remembered her own first time. Remembered the taste of dust in her throat, the way her heart pounded so hard it felt like the enemy could hear it. She wanted to tell him it gets easier, but lying wasn't in her nature. Keep your head down, she said instead, short, sharp, the truth. The helicopter dipped, rattling hard as the pilot pushed low to avoid radar. Wind slashed her face, pulling at her scarf. Below, the city sprawled in broken geometry, rooftops jagged, streets scarred, smoke rising in thin, bitter columns. Her hand brushed the photo inside her vest pocket. She didn't need to look at it. Every detail was carved into her memory. The smile, the eyes, the reason she kept walking back into fire. The bird flared, boots hit dirt. The squad moved quick, practiced, a single organism in rhythm. Mara broke off alone as assigned. Her path veered east, slipping through alleys dark as ink, the rifle across her chest a familiar weight. Silence swallowed her. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was layered, dogs barking in distance. A shutter banging loose against concrete, the shuffle of rats, the faint, constant hum of a generator, to the untrained ear chaos. To hers, a map, a warning system. Halfway to her perch, she froze. A shadow moved at the far end of the street, too smooth, too careful. Her finger brushed the trigger, breath held. But then a child stepped into the light of a flickering street lamp, barefoot, holding something clutched tight to his chest, a worn soccer ball. Her breath released. A crack ran through her armor in that instant. A memory surged, her brother, years younger, kicking a ball through dirt alleys back home, laughing until the sun set. She almost whispered his name, but the child vanished as quickly as he appeared, swallowed by a doorway. She kept moving, faster now, shoving the ghost of memory back where it belonged. The stairwell reeked of damp and rust. She climbed, boots soundless against the concrete. Each floor opened into ruined rooms, burned mattresses, shattered glass, walls riddled with holes, lives interrupted mid-breath. At the top she found her vantage. Broken window, wide arc of visibility, streets below like veins of darkness. She unwrapped her rifle, the metal catching a sliver of moonlight, adjusted bipod, aligned scope, every movement precise, ritualistic, grounding. And then she waited. Waiting was the hardest part. Waiting left room for thoughts, for what-ifs, for the weight she carried. Her comms crackled, team moving into sector, hostile presence likely. She acknowledged with a single click. No words, words wasted breath. Through the glass her world narrowed to crosshairs and shadows. She could hear her heartbeat again, steady, trained. Then movement. Two figures on a rooftop opposite, armed, scanning, hunting. Her finger curled slow, breath steadied, and yet hesitation coiled in her chest. Not fear, something deeper, because one of them, his stance, his frame, looked too familiar, too much like someone she once knew. She blinked, refocused. Logic warred with memory. The mind plays tricks in war zones, she knew that. She whispered it under her breath, but still, the echo wouldn't let go. And just like that, her silence became dangerous. Because the longer she waited, the closer the enemy moved toward her team. She exhaled a controlled surrender, squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked, splitting the night. One figure dropped, the other froze, confused. Before he could react, another shot. Silence returned. But her chest burned, not from recoil, from something else, something she refused to name. She radioed in. Overwatch in position, 2 hostiles down, sector clear. Her voice was calm, professional, but inside something was. Down below, the young private looked up briefly, as if he knew where the unseen guardian perched. His face caught in the glow of a passing flare. And for a second, just a second, Mara felt the tiniest flicker of pride. Not for the shot, but for still being here, for not letting her silence drown her completely. Yet she knew the night was only beginning, and there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. What made her hesitate? The question gnawed at her as the city seemed to hold its breath. She had pulled the trigger, done her job, protected her team, but the ghost of recognition lingered. That face, that stance. For a flicker of a second, she had seen more than just an enemy through the scope. And that was dangerous. Her comms whispered static. The squad advanced block by block, boots crunching broken glass, rifles sweeping arcs of darkness. She tracked them through her scope, shifting angles, her finger brushing the trigger guard out of habit. Protection demanded distance, detachment, but her mind refused detachment tonight. She pressed her forehead against the cool steel of the rifle, tried to reset, focus, but the silence around her wasn't the kind she trusted. It wasn't clean. It wasn't empty. It was crowded, layered with the things she'd buried, the things she thought she could outrun by climbing into high towers and pulling watch alone. A whisper of movement pulled her back. Alleyway to the north. A door cracked open. A man slipped out, rifle slung, head low. She tracked him, breath measured. But before she fired, another figure stumbled after him, unarmed, terrified. A woman clutching a child to her chest. Her scope pinned them in brutal clarity. Enemy and civilian tethered by proximity. One bullet could take down the fighter, but in this distance, this angle, the child was at risk. Her jaw clenched. Her comms crackled again. Overwatch, do you see North Alley? Possible hostile moving, confirm. Her lips barely moved. Confirmed, stand by. She could end it now, protect the squad. But in the heartbeat between inhale and exhale, her mind betrayed her. She saw herself, years ago, Standing in a doorway not unlike that one, her brother tugging at her hand, his voice sharp with fear. And the memory of a gunman in the shadows, the shot that had ripped their world apart, surged so vividly that her hands trembled. She blinked hard, reset. The present demanded her. The hostile shoved the woman aside and raised his weapon. That broke the spell. Her shot cracked, swift, precise. He dropped. The woman scrambled back into darkness, clutching her child, vanishing like smoke. Myra whispered almost to herself, "Go, run." No one else heard. The squad below advanced past the alley, unaware of the moral balance that had nearly unraveled their mission. To them, it was clean. One less hostile. To her, it was another ghost she'd carry. Hours bled into each other, the squad pressed deeper. She followed through her scope, vigilant, but her thoughts circled back to the hesitation. The face that looked familiar, the child with the ball, the mother fleeing into shadow. What was it all trying to tell her? The radio broke the spiral. Overwatch status. She clicked once, still alive, still watching. That was all they needed. But inside, she was unraveling in tiny, invisible threads. The wind picked up, funneling through broken glass, carrying the stench of smoke and cordite. It made the tower groan around her, steel shifting against concrete. She pulled her scarf tighter, but the chill wasn't from the wind. She reached into her pocket again, fingers finding the worn photo, her brother's smile. The only piece of home she had left. He had been 16 when the war found them, too young to be a soldier, too old to be shielded from what came. And he had been taken. That was the truth she hadn't told the squad. That was the truth behind her silence at the briefing. Every mission wasn't just about orders. It was about a promise she could never fulfill, a debt she could never pay. A voice broke in on comms, the private, the young one with nervous hands. "Overwatch, do you ever get used to it? The waiting." She didn't answer at first. The question cut deeper than he knew. Finally, she pressed her mic. "No, you just get better at hiding how much it eats at you." A pause, then his voice quieter, "Thought so." It wasn't a tactical exchange. It wasn't necessary. But in that small moment, they weren't sniper and private. They were just two people admitting what war takes. Silence followed again. This time it felt heavier. Then came the shift. A crack of gunfire erupted below, close, too close. The squad hit cover, shouts filling the comms. Mara's rifle swung instantly, scope zeroing in. Hostiles emerging from side streets, rifles spitting fire. An ambush. Her pulse steadied in the chaos. This was where silence became weapon, not weakness. She exhaled, squeezed, and enemies fell one by one, their fire breaking, their movements scattering. Her shots carved a shield around her squad, invisible but precise. But the enemy wasn't untrained. They adapted, shifting positions, using civilians as cover. Her scope found one, rifle pressed to the head of a trembling boy dragged from a doorway. Her finger froze on the trigger. The team was pinned. Seconds mattered. Her comms barked, "Overwatch, take him." But she couldn't. Not yet. Her eyes locked on the boy. Terror, helplessness. It was her brother's face all over again, replayed across years and continents. Her lungs burned. Her finger trembled. For a heartbeat, she was 16 again, powerless, watching the worst unfold. And then the boy bit the gunman's hand. A flash of defiance, enough of a distraction. She seized it. One shot, clean, the man dropped. The boy bolted. Her squad surged forward, momentum regained. Gunfire roared. Grenades shook the ground. Mara reloaded with practiced rhythm, each round chambered like a vow. Minutes stretched into lifetimes. Then silence again. The squad reported clear. Bodies littered the street. The survivors moved fast, securing ground. Her breath came slow now, deliberate. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The private's voice came back, shaky but alive. "Overwatch, I don't know how you do it." She closed her eyes. "You don't. You just learn to live with what it costs." And as she said it, her chest tightened, because she wasn't sure she was living with it. She was only carrying it, and every mission the weight grew heavier. The colonel's voice cut in, crisp, urgent. "Hail, new intel. High-value target moving through the district. Possible link to insurgent command, your closest. You'll have eyes first." Her throat went dry. This was different. This wasn't just protecting the squad. This was personal. Because she knew the name that went with the intel. She had heard it before, in whispers, in half-buried reports. The man believed to have ordered the attack that killed her brother years ago. She stared through her scope at the empty street, waiting for confirmation. And for the first time all night, her silence wasn't just about grief. It was about the storm rising inside her. Because if that face appeared in her crosshairs tonight, this mission would no longer be about orders. It would be about revenge. How long could silence stretch before it broke a person? Mara asked herself that as she lay flat against crumbling concrete, scope sweeping the streets below. The comms had gone quiet except for clipped check-ins. The squad was regrouping 2 blocks over, but her assignment, her burden, kept her alone. Then came the whisper. "Target is on the move. Black vehicle, 2 escorts, confirm when in sight." Her breath caught. Black vehicle, 2 escorts. She knew it before she even saw it. She had studied this possibility in dossiers, photographs, half-erased intelligence reports. A face etched into memory not from ink on paper, but from the bloodline of her own grief. Her brother's killer. The street below flickered alive with headlights. The vehicle crawled through the ruin, tires crunching glass. 2 armed escorts scanned windows and rooftops. Professional, methodical, but not ghosts, not like her. Her crosshairs hovered over the windshield, a silhouette inside. She could end it here. 1 shot. Years of buried rage released in a trigger pull. Her finger brushed the steel. But then the colonel's voice again. "Hail, hold fire. Command wants him alive. Possible link to supply chains. We need him talking." Alive talking. Her pulse hammered. Orders and vengeance crashed like waves inside her. Her brother's voice echoed in memory, sharp laughter, sudden silence. The sound of a single gunshot years ago. The crosshairs didn't waver, but her soul did. She whispered to herself so low no one could hear. 1 shot, that's all it takes, and it's over. But it wasn't just vengeance she risked, it was everything. The mission, her team, her place among them, her own fragile grip on sanity. She pulled the scope back, exhaled, waited. The vehicle slowed at a checkpoint of debris, forced to weave through. 1 escort moved ahead, scanning. The other fell behind. That left the window. She heard the colonel again, impatient. "Hail, confirm eyes, do not engage unless." But another voice cut in. The young private, raw, earnest. "Overwatch, don't take this the wrong way, but you sound like you're breathing different." Her chest froze. Had she given herself away? Could they hear her trembling restraint? She clicked the comms twice. Confirmation, nothing more. Words would betray her. The vehicle inched forward. Then it happened. The passenger window rolled down. A face caught the pale wash of moonlight, scarred, hardened, eyes sharp as glass. Him. The man who had ordered the raid years ago. The man whose name had been whispered like a curse in every fragment of intel she'd chased since. The man who had taken her brother. Her chest constricted. Her finger pressed half an ounce more pressure against the trigger. And then a child's cry pierced the night. Not from the street, from inside the vehicle. Her scope adjusted almost against her will. In the backseat, small hands, wide eyes, a boy, 6, maybe 7, terrified. The world tilted. Her brother's face, that night, the sound of him calling her name, his fear before the silence. Her rifle wavered, just enough to feel it. She swallowed hard. If she took the shot now, she wouldn't just be killing the man. She'd risk killing the boy. His son, maybe, or a hostage, she couldn't know. But the sight of those eyes shattered something inside her. Her comms barked again. Hail status, do you have the shot? Her silence stretched too long. The colonel's voice sharpened. Answer me, specialist. Finally she clicked once. Confirm, yes, she had eyes, but she couldn't, not yet. The vehicle rolled forward, slipping deeper into the city, slipping away from her scope. She lay back, chest heaving, as if she had just lost the war by not pulling the trigger. But something inside told her it wasn't over. The squad moved in pursuit, streets lit with sporadic gunfire. The hunt was on. Mara stayed on overwatch, tracking shadows, her silence heavier than armor. Hours blurred again, streets shifted. The vehicle abandoned, tracks leading underground to an old subway tunnel. The squad reported movement, requested support. Mara moved from her tower, descending into the dark. The stairwell echoed with her steps, each one louder than she liked. Each one a reminder she was leaving the safety of distance and entering the place where silence cut closer than bullets. The tunnel smelled of damp concrete and mold. Water dripped in steady rhythms. Her rifle light swept arcs of darkness, catching graffiti, rusted rails, abandoned carts. Echoes bounced in ways that made every shadow feel alive. Her comms whispered updates, contact ahead, hostiles guarding entry points, squad moving to flank. She crouched behind a collapsed wall, listening. Boots, muffled voices in a language she half understood, laughter sharp and cruel. She peeked 3 men, relaxed, confident, weapons slung but ready. She steadied her rifle. Her world narrowed again, crosshairs targets breath. 1, 2, 3, shots cracked like whispers, bodies slumped into silence. Her squad moved up behind, catching the aftermath. Clean work, Overwatch, the sergeant muttered, but she barely heard. Because the deeper they pushed, the closer she came to the face she couldn't kill. And with every step her chest grew tighter. At one junction the private caught up beside her. His face was pale, sweat streaking dust down his cheeks. He looked at her like she carried answers. You ever wonder, he whispered, what will be when this is over, if there even is an after? She didn't look at him, couldn't. Her eyes stayed on the dark. But her voice, low, steady, cut through. After will be ghosts, even if we make it home, because too much of us stays here. The private swallowed, nodded, said nothing more. They pressed deeper. Gunfire erupted ahead. The squad pinned again, enemies dug in. Mara took position behind a steel column, her scope cutting through chaos. Shots dropped enemies in precision rhythm. The squad advanced. Then the comms lit up. Target confirmed, East Chamber, guarded. Hail, we need Overwatch cover before breach. Her chest constricted, this was it. She moved silent as shadow, circling through a collapsed passage, finding elevation on a broken ledge. From there she saw it. The chamber below, dim lights strung across, armed guards packing, and in the center him. The man, her brother's ghost made flesh. And beside him the boy, same wide eyes, same trembling hands. Her crosshairs settled on the man's chest. One breath, one squeeze, and it was done. But the boy shifted, clinging to his sleeve. The sight gutted her. Her squad waited for her cover. Lives depended on it. The mission depended on it. Her grief demanded revenge. Her duty demanded restraint. Her silence demanded something she hadn't yet named. Her finger hovered, breath caught. The world shrank to nothing but that fragile moment. And she realized this wasn't about killing him. It was about choosing what kind of ghost she would become. Why did the boy have to be there? The question pulsed in Mara's veins as her crosshairs pinned the man who had once ordered her brother's death. The shot was hers to take, clean, clear, final. But that boy clung to his sleeve like a tether to humanity, like an anchor that refused to let her drag the man into the grave. She froze, not because she couldn't pull the trigger, but because pulling it would mean something more than revenge. It would mean taking a father in front of his son. And she knew that image would outlive any justice. Her comms hissed, the colonel's voice sharp. "Hail status, do you have eyes?" She clicked once, yes. "Then cover us, breach in 60. Her chest constricted. Breach meant chaos. Gunfire, collateral, the boy wouldn't survive it. Her mind spun. She remembered her brother's last words, a whisper she'd never spoken aloud. He had begged her not to let hatred be the only thing left of him. And here she was, crosshairs shaking between vengeance and mercy. 30 seconds. The squad stacked at the chamber door, rifles tight, breaths held. She watched them through her scope, each one unaware of the war she fought inside. 20 seconds. The boy tugged at the man's sleeve, whispered something. She couldn't hear, but she saw the man's face shift, just slightly, softer for the briefest moment. 10 seconds. Her finger trembled, her silence roared. The breach exploded in a flash of noise, door blown, shouts filling the chamber. Gunfire erupted, deafening, chaotic. Mara snapped into instinct, dropping guards left and right, her shots slicing order from chaos. But the man, her target, didn't run. He pulled the boy behind cover, shielded him with his own body. The sight stopped her breath cold. This was the monster who had burned villages, who had ordered the raid that killed her brother. And yet, in this instant, he was just a man shielding a child. Her scope locked. She could end it. Her finger pressed, and she pulled off target. The bullet shattered the lamp above him, raining glass, plunging the chamber into shadow. Confusion spread. Her squad surged forward, overwhelming the disoriented guards, dragging the man down in a storm of shouts and orders. The boy cried out, clinging tighter. "Target secured," the sergeant barked. Mara exhaled, chest trembling. She had spared him, not out of mercy for the man, but for the boy, because killing a father in front of a child would chain that boy to hatred forever, and she couldn't create another version of herself. But silence carried a cost. Later, in the flicker of flashlight beams, her squad bound the man, gagged him, dragged him into the tunnel's spine. The boy clutched his arm, wailing. The squad tried prying him off. He wouldn't let go. The colonel's voice thundered over comms. "Extract both, the boy too. Command wants the full picture." Her rifle lowered. Her body felt hollow. The private sidled up, eyes wide, face pale in the dim glow. "Overwatch, you could have ended him. I saw your scope." She met his gaze, but her voice was quiet, steady. "Not with a child watching, not like that." He swallowed, didn't argue, but his silence told her he didn't know whether to call it weakness or strength. Neither did she. The squad began moving out, prisoner in tow, the boy carried by one of the larger soldiers. The tunnels echoed with boots and dripping water, every step pulling them back toward daylight. But daylight didn't feel like salvation. It felt like exposure, like truth waiting to be reckoned with. They emerged into dawn. The city skyline burned with a pale fire of rising sun, smoke columns glowing orange. The helicopter rotors churned dust into storms as the team loaded prisoner and boy aboard. Mara stayed outside, watching the horizon. The private lingered by her. He looked like he wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Finally, "Do you regret it?" Her throat tightened. She thought of her brother's face, thought of the chance she had let slip. "Every day," she whispered, then softer, "but maybe that's what keeps me human." The bird lifted, carrying prisoner, boy, squad. She remained on the ground, tasked with cleanup, overwatch for the convoy, alone again, as always. Hours later, back at base, the debrief unfolded. Officers clapped shoulders, praised precision, lauded restraint in securing the target alive. To them, it was a clean success. To her, it was anything but clean. She sat in silence at the edge of the room again, the noise swirling around her like static. Commendations were handed out, names praised, hers barely mentioned. Not because she had failed, but because they didn't understand what she had carried into that chamber. When the room emptied, the colonel approached. His face was lined, eyes hard but not unfeeling. "You had the shot." "Yes, sir." "You didn't take it." "No, sir." He studied her. Why? Her silence stretched heavy as stone, then finally, because orders said alive. The colonel nodded slowly, but his eyes searched deeper as if he sensed more beneath her words. "Good. Remember, our job isn't vengeance, it's service." He left. She remained. And in the quiet that followed, she pulled the photo from her pocket, laid it on the table. Her brother's smile stared back at her. For the first time in years, she didn't whisper an apology. She just stared, and wondered if sparing that boy had honored him more than any bullet ever could. But the question lingered. Would she ever forgive herself for letting the man live? Night fell again. The city slept uneasy, and Mara, sitting alone in her quarters, knew her silence wasn't done speaking. Because vengeance was not the only ghost she carried. And tomorrow it would rise again. The base was never truly silent. Generators hummed through the night, boots struck gravel in rotating patrols, and radios hissed with fragmented chatter. But inside Mara's quarters, silence stretched like a second skin. She sat on the narrow bunk, stripping her rifle down with mechanical precision. Bolt, chamber, barrel, cloth running through each piece as though cleansing the weapon might cleanse her own mind. But nothing could polish away the echo of that boy's cry. She had heard it above gunfire, above the squad's shouts, above the ringing aftermath of breach and chaos. It hadn't been the cry of terror alone, it had been something deeper, something raw, a tether pulling at the seams of her silence. Now the boy was here, inside the base. Word traveled fast through soldiers who didn't know how to keep their tongues leashed. He had been placed in the infirmary, fed, given water, examined by medics for injuries. Some scoffed at the decision. Feeding the enemy's spawn, they muttered. Others pitied him, too young to carry the weight of blood and borders. But Mara avoided the infirmary entirely. Until she couldn't. The colonel summoned her at dawn. His office was bare, save for maps pinned to the walls and the faint smell of burned coffee. He stood behind his desk, sleeves rolled, eyes fixed not on her but on the window beyond. "Hale," he said, voice steady, "you spared him." Her body stiffened. "I followed orders, sir." "I'm not talking about the commander. I'm talking about the boy." The words landed heavier than she expected. She kept her face blank. "He's been quiet," the colonel continued. "Won't eat much, won't speak, just stares. Some of the men think he's a liability, others think he's a chance, a reminder we're not monsters." His eyes shifted to her finally, sharp as glass. "I want you to observe him." Her gut tightened. "Sir, I'm not." "You're the only one he looked at, the only one he clung to after the chaos. You scared him the least." That cut sharper than praise. She had pulled her trigger, shattered glass, plunged his world into shadow, and yet somehow she was the one he trusted. The irony twisted in her chest. "I'll observe," she said, though the word felt like an ill-fitting uniform. The colonel nodded. "Good," dismissed. The infirmary smelled of antiseptic and loneliness. Beds lined the walls, most empty, a few holding soldiers wrapped in bandages and silence. At the far corner, under the muted light of a lamp, sat the boy. He couldn't have been older than 8. His hair tangled, his eyes dark hollows rimmed red from sleeplessness. He clutched his knees to his chest, gaze fixed on the floor as though afraid eye contact might summon judgment. Mara stood at the doorway for a long moment, her presence unnoticed. Her boots felt too loud against the tile, so she stepped softer, slower, until she stood a few feet away. He glanced up then, quick, wary, and in that brief instant she saw it, the echo of her own silence. "Do you speak our tongue?" she asked, voice low. No answer, just a blink, a shift of shoulders, the faintest tightening of his grip around his knees. She crouched, bringing her eyes level with his. "I won't hurt you." Still nothing. But his stare lingered on her face, searching, testing. She felt it then, the impossible weight of a child's eyes. She had faced insurgents in alleys, sharpshooters across rooftops, commanders with armies at their back. None had unstrung her as thoroughly as this boy's silent gaze. She rose, stepped back. "I'll be nearby," she said, more to herself than to him. And she left. Days passed. She returned each morning, stood near, waited. Sometimes she brought food, placed it on the table, walked away. Sometimes she sat across the room, cleaning her weapon while his eyes flicked toward her and back again. The squad noticed. The private asked once, "Why waste your time?" She didn't answer because she didn't know. But slowly the boy began to shift. He ate when she left food. He slept a little longer each night. He no longer recoiled when she entered. His silence didn't break, but it changed from fear into watchfulness. And Mara began to understand. Silence wasn't emptiness, it was survival. The commander, meanwhile, remained locked in an underground cell. Interrogations yielded little, half-truths, deflections, calculated defiance. He spoke like a man who knew time was his ally. But when Mara was sent to observe one such session, she noticed something others missed. His composure cracked not under threats, not under pain, but when asked about the boy. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickered with something: fear, regret, love. It unsettled her, because she wanted him to be a monster, needed him to be. Monsters were easier to hate, easier to justify. But monsters didn't shield children with their own bodies. And that contradiction gnawed at her. One night, unable to sleep, she walked the perimeter. The desert stretched endless, stars hanging like a million eyes. Her boots crunched gravel, her rifle slung, her thoughts heavier than armor. The private caught up to her, cigarette between his lips, face pale in starlight. "You're different lately," he said. "Am I?" "You don't talk much, but now you talk even less." He smirked faintly, trying to lighten. "Didn't think that was possible." She didn't smile. His smirk faded. "Look, I saw what you did back there, with the boy, with the commander. Some of the guys, they think you hesitated, that maybe you're losing your edge. And you." He flicked ash into the dirt. "I think you saw something the rest of us didn't." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe that, but part of her wondered if he was just trying to convince himself. He exhaled smoke into the night. "Don't let their silence eat you alive, Hale." But her silence wasn't eating her. It was filling her. And she wasn't sure there'd be anything left when it was done. A week later, the boy finally spoke. It was morning, the infirmary quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Mara had placed food on the table, turned to leave, and then soft, hoarse. "Why didn't you kill him?" She froze. The voice was so small, so brittle, she thought she imagined it. She turned. The boy's eyes locked onto hers, sharp despite exhaustion. Her throat went dry. She searched for words but found none. "You had him," the boy whispered. His accent was thick, but the meaning cut clear. "You could have killed him." Her chest constricted. How could he know? Had he seen her scope, felt her hesitation? "Because," her voice faltered, she forced it steady, "because you were there." His brow furrowed, confusion warring with suspicion. "He is a bad man." The words lanced through her. Out of a child's mouth, truth sounded heavier. "Yes," she whispered, "he is." "Then why?" She swallowed hard. "Because killing him in front of you would make you carry it, and I couldn't do that to you." The boy stared. His silence stretched. And for the first time she felt judged, not by commanders, not by comrades, but by innocence itself. Finally he looked away, ate in silence. But something had shifted. That night Mara sat in her quarters staring at her brother's photograph again. His smile was the same, but her reflection in the glass looked different. Older, harder, haunted. She whispered into the dark, "Am I doing right by you?" No answer came, only silence. But she began to realize, maybe silence was the only answer she would ever get. And maybe it was enough. Yet deep inside, Mara knew the war wasn't done. Not with the commander, not with the boy, not with herself. Because silence wasn't peace. It was the storm before whatever came next. And in the desert, storms never stayed far. The rumor came at dawn, carried not by official orders but by whispers threading through the base like smoke through cracks. A trade, a deal, something unspoken being shaped behind doors too thick for ordinary soldiers to breach with ears. Mara first heard it while on the range, methodically punching holes through paper silhouettes. Each shot cracked, echoed, vanished into the desert air. Between reloads, the private muttered low, as if afraid the targets themselves might report him. "They're talking prisoner exchange," he said, eyes fixed ahead. "Commander for intel or leverage, or maybe his boy." Mara's finger froze against the trigger. His boy. The words reverberated, cutting through her silence. She squeezed another shot, but her hand trembled. The bullet veered left. She lowered the rifle, exhaled hard. "Where did you hear that?" "Mess hall, 2 corporals," said Brass is considering it. He glanced sideways, reading her stiffness. "That true?" She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. But the seed was planted, roots already digging through her thoughts. The colonel confirmed it later that evening. His office, same smell of burned coffee, same maps riddled with pins and scars of ink. His eyes were sharper this time, though, measuring. "We've been contacted," he said. "They want him back, badly enough they're willing to trade." Mara stood motionless, every muscle taut. "What's the trade?" "Information, coordinates, routes we've been bleeding men to secure. They say they'll hand it all over if we return him." "And the boy," her voice slipped before she could stop it. The colonel's gaze cut through her. "Off limits. He's staying here until we know who he really is. He's leverage whether you like it or not." Her stomach twisted. "He's a child." "He's also their commander's blood." The colonel's voice hardened. "That makes him a weapon, never forget it." But Mara couldn't stop remembering. The boy's voice asking, "Why didn't you kill him?" The weight of that small gaze. The silence heavier than any rifle she had ever carried. She visited the infirmary again. The boy sat in the same corner, knees pulled close, eyes darting like a stray animal. This time she didn't bring food. She brought truth, or at least a shard of it. "They may send your father back," she said softly. His head snapped up, disbelief flashing. His lips parted, but no sound came. She crouched closer, lowering her tone as though speaking across a grave. "They want to trade him, but not for you, for information." The boy's face twisted, confusion tangled with anger. "They lie." "Maybe," she searched his eyes. "Do you want him back?" His small fists clenched. He stared at the floor, silent, but the answer was carved into every tremor of his body. Mara reached out, paused, pulled her hand back. "If they bring him back, nothing will be the same. Not for you, not for us." Finally he whispered, almost broken, "He is still my father." And she realized then, it wasn't a question of monsters or men. It was blood. Blood that bound even when it bruised. That night Mara couldn't sleep. She sat on her bunk, photo of her brother propped against the wall. His smile, frozen in time, accused her with its innocence. She spoke aloud, voice hushed. "Would you understand if I let a man live to keep a child whole, or would you hate me for it?" The photograph gave no answer, but her chest hollowed further, silence gnawing like a wound. The commander, however, spoke plenty. She was ordered to guard his transfer one morning, down to the interrogation cell. He sat chained, posture calm, eyes sharp with the patience of a man who knew storms always passed. "You are Hale," he said, his accent wrapping around the syllables. She didn't answer. He smiled faintly. "You hesitate, even when silent I can hear it. My men saw you through glass, rifle raised, but no shot." Her spine stiffened. "Why?" he pressed. "Why did you hold back?" She met his eyes, cold. "Because killing you in front of your son would have broken him." His composure cracked just slightly. His jaw flexed, his gaze darkened. "You saw him," he whispered, almost reverent. "You spared him." "I saved him," she snapped. "No," he leaned forward, chains rattling softly. "You tied his fate to yours. He will follow your silence, not mine." Her chest constricted. She wanted to strike him, to shut the words down, but part of her feared he was right. Whispers turned into meetings, meetings into plans. The trade was set in motion, not confirmed, not sealed, but moving like a current, dragging them all downstream. The private cornered her one night, eyes restless. "You're not okay with this, are you?" She stayed silent. He shook his head. "I get it. The boy, he's messing with you, with all of us. He makes it real." He paused, exhaling smoke into the night air. "My sister had a kid, got caught between crossfire years ago. Little girl didn't make it. I still see her face when we raid houses. Every damn time." His voice cracked, the mask slipping. "Don't let them trade him back just so he can grow up to be another one of them. Don't." Mara's throat tightened. She hadn't asked for his story, but now she carried it too. Another silence, another weight. 2 days before the trade, the boy disappeared. The base erupted in chaos. Alarms blared, soldiers scoured every corner, floodlights cut through desert dark. Gates were sealed, radios hissed with frantic updates. Mara's heart pounded as she searched, breath shallow, boots slamming against gravel. She checked the infirmary, the mess, even the shadows of the walls. Nothing, until a guard reported movement near the cells. Mara ran. The boy was there, small frame pressed against the bars, whispering in a tongue she barely understood. The commander crouched opposite him, chained but somehow larger than life. Their eyes locked, words flowing between them like a river Mara couldn't dam. The boy's face was wet with tears. His hands reached through the bars, trembling. Mara froze in the doorway, breath caught. For a heartbeat she saw it, not enemy and prisoner, not soldier and threat, just father and son. And then the commander's gaze shifted, found hers. His smile was slight, knowing. "You cannot keep silence forever," he murmured. Mara's chest constricted, air thinning. She stepped forward, pulled the boy back gently but firmly. He resisted, sobbing, small fists pounding weakly against her vest. "No," he cried, "he is my father." Her jaw clenched, arms tightening around him. "I know," she whispered, "I know." But as she carried him away, his cries echoing through the corridor, Mara realized something terrible. The trade wasn't just a negotiation of men and maps. It was a negotiation of souls. And hers was already on the line. That night she lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart heavy with the sound of a child's tears still echoing in her chest. The desert outside was quiet, too quiet. But inside her, silence raged louder than war. The desert swallowed light quickly. Twilight bled into black, stars carving holes in the night sky. The base hummed with a kind of restrained panic, not shouted orders or chaos, but that suffocating quiet where every soldier knows something is coming, and no one wants to be the first to say it. The trade was happening. Tomorrow. Mara felt it in her bones before the colonel confirmed it. She saw it in the way men cleaned their rifles twice over, in the way maps were folded tighter, in the way silence sat thicker than dust. When the colonel finally called her in, there was no ceremony. Just a table, a single lamp casting shadows that seemed larger than the men who stood beneath them. "You'll be part of the escort," he said flatly. "Commander to the checkpoint. Clean, controlled, no deviations. Do your job, hail, and it ends." She nodded once, but her chest was fire. "Sir," she said carefully, "and the boy." The colonel's eyes flickered just briefly. "He stays. He's not part of the deal." Her throat tightened. "That's not what they'll expect." "That's not our concern." His jaw hardened. "The boy is leverage. Until this war ends, he's insurance, nothing more." Her silence stretched too long. The colonel's eyes narrowed. You hesitate, Hale, don't. She forced her voice steady. Yes, sir. But the words curdled in her mouth. That night Mara walked the perimeter again. The desert wind was sharp, carrying sand that stung skin, whispering like ghosts against the wire. The private joined her, cigarette ember glowing faint in the dark. It's real then, he said, the trade. Tomorrow. He exhaled smoke, bitterness in the curl of his lips. Feels wrong, giving a wolf back to his pack. Mara didn't answer. He studied her profile, eyes narrowing. You don't think we should, do you? She let the silence answer. The private flicked ash. I knew it. You've been off since that raid, since the kid. His voice softened, breaking for the first time. You see too much, Hale, more than the rest of us can afford to. That's gonna break you. She turned to him. His face was young, lined with dirt and fatigue but not yet hardened into stone. He carried his sister's ghost in every glance, every drag of his smoke. Maybe we're already broken, she said quietly. The wind carried the words away, leaving only silence. The boy didn't sleep. Mara found him awake in the infirmary, knees to chest, eyes wide in the dim light. He looked at her when she entered, not startled this time, not afraid, just knowing. They're taking him back, he whispered. She froze. Who told you? He shook his head. I hear things. His gaze pierced her. You will let them. Her chest tightened. It's not my choice. It is. The words cut like a blade, too sharp for a child's voice. You had choice before. You chose silence. You chose me. Her breath caught. The boy's eyes shimmered wet. He is not just commander. He is my father. His voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time Mara saw not the bloodline of her enemy, but the small, breaking heart of a child. She knelt, tried to speak, but the words withered. Instead, she whispered only, I don't know what's right anymore. The boy stared at her, searching her silence for answers, but none came. The morning burned bright, sun spilling fire across sand. The convoy was small, 2 armored trucks, a Humvee, Mara's squad escorting the commander shackled in the back. Engines roared, gravel spat from tires, radios crackled faint. Mara sat opposite him, rifle in her lap. The commander's eyes stayed on hers the entire ride, unblinking. You look torn, he said finally, voice steady. She clenched her jaw. You think your silence protects you, but silence is choice. It screams louder than words. His smile was faint, dangerous. My son already hears it. Her hands tightened on the rifle. The private shifted beside her, catching tension but not meaning. He spat into the dirt. Save your breath, old man. You'll be gone soon enough. The commander chuckled low, shaking his chains. Yes, gone but not forgotten. Mara's pulse pounded. Every word felt like a trap she couldn't avoid stepping into. The checkpoint was a scar on the desert, rusted fences, concrete barriers, a strip of road swallowed by silence. Their convoy halted, engines idling heavy. Opposite them, a second convoy arrived. Figures emerged, armed, tense, eyes cutting sharp. Between them stood a man carrying a satchel. Intel, perhaps, or bait. The colonel's voice crackled through comms. Keep it tight, no deviations, clean handoff. Soldiers moved forward, weapons leveled. The commander was pulled from the truck, chains clinking, sand crunching under boots. Mara followed, rifle steady, heartbeat unsteady. The air was electric, too still, too staged. Every instinct screamed trap. Then she saw him. The boy. Her breath stopped. He stood behind the enemy line, small frame dwarfed by rifles, eyes locked onto his father. Her mind spun. The colonel had said he'd stay, that he was leverage, but there he was on the other side. Alive, watching. The commander's lips curled, victory glinting in his eyes. See, he whispered, blood calls blood. Mara's chest twisted. The trade began, slow, calculated. Soldiers advanced, goods exchanged, every step thick with distrust. The commander walked toward his people, chains rattling, back straight as if he had never been caged. His eyes never left his son. And Mara's rifle trembled. She could stop this, one squeeze, one shot. Her scope's ghost burned in her mind. The glass, the hesitation, the silence that had spared him once. Now silence screamed again. The private hissed beside her, "Hale, if you're gonna take it now." But she couldn't. Not with the boy watching. Not with his eyes heavy on her soul. The trade ended. The enemy convoy pulled back, commander reclaimed, son at his side. Dust rose in their wake, swallowing them whole. And Mara stood frozen, rifle lowered, silence thundering louder than war. Back at the base, chaos churned. The colonel raged, fists pounding tables, orders barking sharp. The boy wasn't in their custody. The enemy had tricked them. Information exchanged might be false. The balance of war had shifted. But none of it reached Mara. She sat alone in her quarters, rifle on the floor, brother's photograph trembling in her hands. "You'd hate me for this," she whispered. "Or maybe you'd understand." Tears blurred the smile in the photo. "Because sometimes," her voice cracked, "silence is the only thing that keeps you human." That night she dreamed of rubble turned to stage, of a spotlight no one could dim. Not victory, not defeat, just a woman standing in silence, carrying the weight of choices the world would never see. And when she woke, sweat-soaked, breath ragged, she knew one thing for certain. The war wasn't about land, or maps, or even power. It was about eyes. The ones that watched, the ones that judged, the ones that remembered. And Mara's silence had given them all a story they would never forget. The desert was restless after the trade. Sandstorms rose in the distance like ghosts refusing burial, radio chatter flickered with distrust, and every man at the base carried the same weight. They had been fooled. But Mara carried something heavier. She carried the boy's eyes. Eyes that had followed his father into dust, leaving her with a silence sharper than any blade. In the days that followed, suspicion thickened like smoke. The colonel paced briefings, anger lashing like a whip. Maps were redrawn, patrols doubled, rations cut. Men cursed the trade, cursed leadership, cursed the silence that had kept them blind. And in the barracks, whispers carried Mara's name. She hesitated. She let him slip. She knew. Rumors wove tighter than wire. None spoken to her face, but all felt in the way shoulders turned, in the way conversations died when she entered. The private was the only one who lingered. One night he found her on the range, rifle cold against the desert air. "You can't carry it all," he said quietly. She didn't look at him. "I already do." He lit a cigarette, the ember faint against stars. "When my sister's girl died, I kept thinking I should have done more, been there, warned her something. But guilt doesn't build anything, it only eats." Mara lowered the rifle, her hands shook. "Then what do you build?" He exhaled smoke, gazed distant. "Whatever you can live with." The words sank deep, but she wasn't sure she could live with anything anymore. 2 weeks later, intelligence confirmed what she already feared. The commander had resurfaced, stronger, rallying men in the shadows, striking convoys, bleeding the map red. And the boy seen by scouts at his side, no longer huddled, standing, watching. The silence Mara had given him had grown into something else, a seed she wasn't sure she'd meant to plant. The colonel called her in again. His voice was iron this time, stripped of patience. "You had your chance, Hale, twice, and you froze, now we bleed for it." Mara stood straight, but her chest burned. "Sir," she said, steady, "if I had killed him in front of the boy, that blood would live in his eyes forever. He would have grown into something worse." The colonel slammed his fist onto the desk. "And now he grows into his father's shadow. You didn't save him, Hale. You delivered him back." His words struck deep, because part of her feared he was right. Her silence held, but inside it cracked. That night she couldn't stay within walls. She slipped past the wire, walked into desert dark. Sand crunched under boots, stars hung heavy, air tasted of dust and fate. She thought of her brother, of the photograph that never aged, of the promise she had made to protect, to honor, to somehow make sense of loss through duty. And she thought of the boy. His question, "Why didn't you kill him?" His plea, "He is still my father." His cry, "No." She pressed her palms to her face, breath shuddering. Silence had always been her armor, but now it felt like her prison. The private found her hours later, crouched on a dune, rifle at her side. He didn't speak at first, just stood, cigarette unlit between his fingers. Finally he said, "You can't save them all, Hale." Her voice broke, "Then why try?" He crouched beside her, eyes raw in starlight. "Because saving one changes you, and maybe that's the only war worth fighting." She closed her eyes, tears she hadn't let fall burning tracks down her face. For the first time, she let someone hear her silence. The war dragged on. Patrols, ambushes, blood, dust, days folding into each other like pages of a book no one wanted to finish. Mara fought, survived, endured, but something inside her shifted. She no longer pulled the trigger with the same certainty. She no longer marched blind into orders without thought. She watched, listened, remembered the weight of eyes too small to carry so much. And though she never spoke of it, the men began to notice. They stopped calling her ghost behind her back. They stopped doubting her silence. Because sometimes in firefights, her quiet steadiness saved them all. Months later, in a raid on a border village, Mara froze again. Not because of an enemy, but because of a sound. A child crying. Her rifle lowered instinctively. She pushed past walls into a shattered room, and there, another boy, younger, alone, trembling. She knelt, hand steady, voice soft, "It's all right." And in that moment she understood. She hadn't lost the boy to his father. She hadn't failed her brother. She hadn't broken under silence. She had learned what it cost, and why it mattered. The war would not end with her, or with the boy, or with the commander. Wars never do. But one day she would walk away, not with medals, not with parades, just with silence. Silence that carried the weight of rubble turned to stage. Silence that had seen courage become spotlight. And maybe, just maybe, that silence would be remembered. When she finally left the base, years later, no one clapped. No one cheered. She walked through gates alone, boots crunching gravel, bags slung over her shoulder. But as she reached the desert's edge, she paused, looked back once. The sun was setting, bleeding orange across endless sand. Shadows stretched long, like memory itself refusing to let go. Mara closed her eyes, inhaled deep. Her brother's face flickered in her mind. The boy's eyes followed. And for the first time, she whispered into the open air. No one to hear, no one to judge. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She let the words fade, let silence stand. And then she walked on, into the horizon. The screen would fade to black here. No music swelling into triumph, just a pause, just breath, just silence. The kind that lingers long after the story ends.